A year has passed, both slow and fast, but my piece today is neither a homage or an anniversary newscast. It's a reflective monologue, my hope and my sorrow and introspective. The past year has set so much more into perspective, and I'm split on every level, every thought, and every blood vessel, because no future feels gentle when there's a storm howling at your door and it just won't settle. At least this is how it feels for me. It comes and goes, oh. Some days I'm so low, but some days I've savored lockdown in slow-mo. As a tracksuit virtuoso, I've started to dance in my kitchen. I'm finding this new ease. I'm relearning to move and breathe and hearing to listen and taking my time and doing absolutely nothing. It's just fine. More than that, it's liberating. I don't know about you, but the past year has radically forced me to rethink and reconsider how I've been spending my time and my energies. And thinking back to this unconscious day-to-day, how many nameless faces was I trying to please? But also, how many nameless faces should I have said hi to on the street? The clockwork has run loose on most of our drilled-in commutes, except for frontline workers and those working to survive too. There's less buses, there's less routes, there's less rushing, there's less rush hour tube, there's no rush hour tube. There's no meal prep Tupperware Jengas, no more carrying around empty tote bags full of rattling containers, no more mind the gap, mind your back, whoops, I'm sorry, get behind the yellow line, please let passengers off the train before boarding. At least that's how it feels for me. Comes and goes though. Some days I'm on top of the world and some days I am falling oh so low. And I'm dipping and diving through this paralyzing angst and dread, and my joy and my hope is fettered because deep inside, I feel like this might not get better. And there's this bitter taste on my tongue, and it just won't settle. This is one story, one narrative. But there's billions more and they're not always comparable. There's suffering that's gut-wrenching and heartbreaking and terrible. We're all in the same storm, but we were in different boats with 7 billion different variables. And that's when it goes low. That rush hour hasn't slowed. There's a lot of boats bracing the storm with no anchor to hold. Some with no place to call home. Some watch the storm from a throne, and in silence some will suffer so alone. And in the beginning, I'd cry when I see the daily death toll. Now sometimes I look at them without a second glance. It's remarkable how the human mind can adapt to a new normality, a new fatality when it needs a chance, a numbing rationality to the circumstance. Now, what would I know what it's like to be a single mother? Working full-time with 3 kids smothered in supper, exhausted. She can't bring her kids to her brother. Her mother is sick, they almost lost her. And if the virus hits and she gets sick, could she bear to think what that would cost her? And I wonder about the elderly neighbor, grieving. He lost his wife last summer. His days turn to frost, the pain doesn't stop, and his morning walks have turned to slumber. She wasn't just another number. She was his wife, his life, his wonder, and she was not just another number. And what about all the ones that I don't know and the ones that I don't see? Barracks brimmed with violence, asylum and refugees, prisons spiraling, no space to hide from the virus, signs saying, please rescue me. All those sleeping rough, no one wants to touch, no one is out much. It's been 2 days since that last lunch, and every week there's someone new on the sidewalk hunched. The healthcare is crumbling. Nurses with PTSD, doctors with depression, healthcare staff screaming for a raise and protection, saying, please rescue me. When, what, and if this storm recedes, what are we going back to? What about the nauseating surge in domestic violence? The domestic abuse, and from the first week of lockdown, where you have hotlines ringing, and doubling and tripling from the UK to Tunisia to Colombia, partners are knocked down. When, what, and if this storm recedes, what are we going back to? A UN inspector had to come to the UK in 2018 to investigate extreme poverty. He found that 1/5 of the population was living in it. 40% of children were predicted to be living in poverty by 2021. That's this year, and those were pre-corona numbers at a time when youth services has been cut by 70% in a decade. We can't go back to how it's been. We can't go back to normality. Bear with me, all of us cannot wait to see friends and family, but when we talk about shaping a future worth investing in, the past shouldn't be our guideline or our blueprint. Things were not okay in the first place. At this point, going back to how it used to be is more of a threat than a reassurance. We're not at the brim of a fault line, we are living in it. Life as we know it has been flipped on its head. We've turned the world upside down for a cure, but we haven't addressed the underlying problem. There's no sustainable solving. The next pandemic is just around the corner and getting stronger. This is a worldwide responsibility. We cannot just blame it on foreigners. We are walking straight back into a disaster, and these are facts and not omens. Everything is so fragile. Things are so delicate. And it worries me. I need to invest in the future to go forward and not back. You can't rebuild ruins with super glue and blue tack. The weeds have always been stronger than the pavement. Crises opens up spaces. It's up to us to guide the direction and shape it. Being creative with a solution is the must, and the creative solutions must be discussed. Dream big, and maybe I'm just not dreaming big enough. What can I input? Should I wait? What can I take? What can I give? What can I make? Is it too late? And what if I take off this masochistic cloak of gripping ache? And focus. Remember, breathe through the headlines. 7 billion different narratives. Why am I allowing this one to guide mine? In every case throughout the pandemic, people have stepped up. Communities have mobilized, and every day I saw people go out of the way to help others, most more than twice. Mutual aid groups for food and shelter, teachers uniting to keep kids together, volunteered at the food banks no matter the weather, and people driving out to hold up signs of solidarity outside the barbed wire fences of detention centers. It's been the daily acts of kindness, this coffee's on the house. I brought you bread and flowers, take some time off, I'll take your kids to the park. It's been the, hey, come outside, I'm out front with lunch. It's been the, I wouldn't worry about that, we've paid your rent this month. Local leaders are rising, the gardens are thriving, there's books, recipes, skill shares, and advice that are exchanged with curiosity and smiling. No one ever said our solution will be faced alone. Everything you want to change is already in motion. Find the current, find the movement, find your allies, fight for this improvement. Dream big, dream bigger, dream biggest. This is one story, one hope, one narrative. There's billions more. But you know what? Maybe they are comparable.
And so, to our blizzard of stories. Over the past year, through various lockdowns, curtailments of social lives, tragedy and loss, loneliness and separation, hope has been in short supply. A candle flame, it has been a struggle to keep protected from the winds racing around outside. And yet, as Fedzilla just put it, the past should not be our guideline or blueprint, and that crises open up spaces. And so we wanted to kick off our What Next Summit by giving your hope and sense of possibility the equivalent of a day at a spa. We wanted to give you an hour of stories from the UK and further afield, most of which we would wager you haven't heard before, but which when put together will feel like you just spent an hour in a positivity wind tunnel. Each project will have 5 minutes to which they will be tightly held, having brought their best punctual selves along to this blizzard. I'd like to thank all our participants in advance for their generosity, their stories, and their punctuality. This is going to be so great. Right, so welcome to our blizzard of stories. And we are going to kick off with Chris Rowland from Avesco in Lewes, Sussex, the community energy company that grew out of Transition Town Lewes. And he's going to tell us about the Community Heat project, aiming to take the whole village of Barkham off its oil dependency. Over to you, Chris. Your 5 minutes start now.
Hi, I'm Chris Rowland, and I'm going to share my screen now. Let's hope this works. Share from beginning. Okay, so I'm Chris Rowland from Transition Town Lewes, and Transition Town Lewes was set up in 2007, and we had a vision to create a community energy company which would then have its mission to generate 100% of electricity or energy needs locally from renewable resources. And the project we're probably best known for is the one at Harvey's Brewery, which we set up in 2011, and we raised a community share offer to finance that project. I'm going to talk about the sort of mechanics of energy, and this is the centralized energy supply from the past. And about a decade ago, we were supplied by 6 big energy suppliers. Electricity just flowed down the national grid in one direction, and then that met us as householders at the end of the line. And it was set up a long time ago, and it worked perfectly fine when electricity was coming in one direction. Locally, you have a district network operator who manages that energy grid. And in the southeast, the district network operator is called UK Power Networks. Now we're moving to a decentralized energy supply. And this has disrupted the system. We have a lot of what are called distributed generators. They're providing solar PV from solar farms, solar on the rooftops of homes. We're having electric vehicles, we're having community hydro, battery storage, and wind farms being built. And there's a cost attached to this for upgrading the grid. You can't add more and more of this energy onto the grid because it was never designed this way without having an upgrade. And someone has to pay for that. And ultimately, that will be all of us through our electricity bills. So Community Heat is a project to take the village of Barkham off oil, which has a high carbon content, and switch to electric heating and do it in a planned way so that the village can then switch but also a cost-effective way in which we can upgrade the local grid. Barkham is a village that we've worked for quite some time. There's high energy bills. There's a lot of carbon emissions. Most of the people are using oil in the village. And what we're going to do is, working with our partners, UK Power Networks and Brewer Happold, is we're going to make the planned approach. And we need those partners because we need an engineering firm to help us, and the UK Power Networks, because they operate the national grid, to create that planned approach. And in order to do this, we're surveying homes, we're putting energy monitors in homes. We've got 200 homes that we hope to have signed up. We've already got 100 signed up. 50 of those have already got energy monitors in them. And then we provide anonymized data that goes back to Brewer Happold and UK Power Networks. And they then crunch all those numbers and that data. And from out of that, then they can create a planned approach at the end of the year for the village to come off oil and switch to electric heat in the most cost-effective way and the most efficient way for the village. And we're going to work with trusted local installers, and we're going to work with our local authority, and we're going to look at different ways in which we can also bring in income streams to create, and we're going to create a new company called Barkham Energy, and then using flexibility and time of use tariffs, we're going to find a way to for the village to own this project as Barkham Energy. And that will then, hopefully, using the planned approach, working with Brewer Happold and UK Power Networks, provide us with a planned way that's the most cost effective and the quickest way for the village to make the transition from oil to electric heat. And that's community heat in a snapshot. And just to end, we will be writing the book from this project and sharing it with other communities so that they understand how we achieve this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chris. And if you could just finish with sharing your screen, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So on to our next story, which is from My Grateful UK, who run cookery classes led by migrant chefs who are struggling to integrate and access employment due to legal and linguistic barriers. Their mission is to empower and celebrate the chefs on their journey to employment and independence. So Elizabeth, it's over to you.
Thank you all. My name is Elizabeth. I am representing My Grateful tonight. I am a migrant and I'm originally from the western part of Nigeria. Now, My Grateful is a social enterprise that uses food as a platform where we help to integrate asylum seekers, refugees, and migrants into the society. Now, if we know a bit about this group of people that I've just mentioned, you would know that life can be pretty much challenging for a typical asylum seeker or an undocumented migrant, and even a refugee who's gained a full-fledged status of a British citizen in this case. A typical asylum seeker an undocumented migrant does not have access to benefits, rights to work, or even rights to go to school. Pretty much, I say they don't have the right to dream. And life can be very challenging, not only physically, financially, but definitely mentally for someone in the long range. I know because as a migrant, I waited 8 years to have my papers regularized in the country. And those 8 years were lived in limbo, pretty much living life with your heads bent down. At My Grateful, we use cookery as a platform where our chefs are celebrated. Currently, we have up to 41 chefs from all over the country. Our chefs go from being passionate home cooks to being professional cookery class teachers. Before lockdown, we used to have face-to-face classes where chefs meet with different people, different times, and they teach and build confidence. Over lockdown now, we moved on to Zoom classes, and that's been really very beautiful too, because we can now have My Grateful in anywhere whatsoever, whether in any country, as long as the time zone permits us. Our chefs during the 3 months training program learn to build their confidence, learn to build up their English language skills, and also do a lot of public speaking practices. I, for one, benefited from that because I would never want to speak in public until I got to My Grateful. And very importantly, we help chefs to have the extra income that they do not normally have the access to. It's not so for a typical asylum seeker, they don't even have the rights to earn any income. So the little that they get from My Grateful as a solidarity fund that we give, whether they're teaching classes or they are not, usually comes very, very helpful. So at My Grateful, we call it a United Nation, a mini United Nation. Chefs come there without the fear of apprehension, the fear of deportation, and they feel the right and the privilege to be able to express themselves. It's so uncanny how food can break across all the barriers that usually would be in place. And of course, there's so much misconception that exists concerning about the typical migrant or asylum seekers. But at My Grateful, we create an atmosphere where people are celebrated, where people feel empowered. A lot of our chefs have moved forward now to have their own catering businesses. Some of them have moved on to employment. I am one person who has benefited a lot from My Grateful by moving on from being a chef to now being someone who works at the back end of the office, and also do a lot of facilitations. At My Grateful, I learned to grow my confidence. I learned to have a connection back to the Elizabeth that I used to be. Of course, the life in limbo does take a toll on a typical migrant and asylum seeker, because feel generally unwanted. You don't know if you're going back to your home country or if the Home Office is going to come up with a definite a negative evaluation of your case. But at that time of waiting, My Grateful creates a platform where chefs do not have to leave all their cares behind, and they have an atmosphere where they celebrate themselves, where they raise their heads up, and they also get to share their home countries with every other person. For me personally, My Grateful gave me a new lease to life. He helped me build my confidence. He helped me to reconnect to who I am. So My Grateful, we keep on trying to empower in the way we can our migrants, our asylum seekers, and our refugees. And right now, we're in the midst of having our home cookery school, where our chefs can even feel much more at home. Thank you so much. That's my time up.
Elizabeth, thank you so much. That was wonderful. And My Grateful are running a crowdfunder right now for a new cookery school in London. So do check out the link that is in the chat or just about to go into the chat and donate if you can. So next up, we have ecosystem restoration camps, a global network of community-led camps across the world, restoring ecosystems and people. So I'm going to hand over now to Ashley Brown, who is going to tell us more about that. Ashley.
Hi everyone, it's really inspiring to see so many people here, and I've already felt very moved by people that have come before me. So thank you very much for inviting me to speak to you today. Let me find my presentation. Okay, I think you're just going to have to see my desktop for a second. Okay, there we go. Okay. Pressing start. So, we are called the Ecosystem Restoration Camps Movement, and we are a movement of everyday people that are coming together in camps around the world to restore and rehabilitate degraded ecosystems, and we're doing it in a way that involves everyone. This whole movement began with a man called John D. Liu, who was involved in this project that you can see here in this slide. It's called the Lus Plateau Project in China, and it was a massive land rehabilitation project that was funded by the World Bank. You can see how transformational the work was, millions of people involved, and transforming an area the size of Belgium. John was really inspired by taking part in filming this project and set off on a journey to restore degraded land around the world. He took part in the restoration of many countries, including Rwanda and Ethiopia, was speaking to local governments about the power of ecosystem restoration, and kept having a dream that people would gather in camps and take part in this, what he calls the great work of our time. This dream came true. He put out a call on Facebook in 2016 and wrote an article in Permaculture Magazine UK about this idea, and hundreds of people came forward saying that they wanted to make this happen. So, and I was one of those people. We were given some land in the south of Spain to start our first camp, and these are pictures of the restoration happening. You can see how dry and desertified this region is. The movement has grown since 2016 to now, where we have 37 camps around the world. These are locally led projects of people that are restoring all sorts of landscapes, including mangroves, tropical forests in the Amazon, super dry and degraded parts of the world like Western Australia. And the camps are in 3 different categories. So there's the seed phase, which is where it's still an idea, the camp's still an idea and it's in development. The seedling phase, where it's in the startup sort of area, and established, which is where camps are ready to host people. And we welcome anyone to join, basically. Anyone can become a camp, no matter what phase they're in, and anyone can get involved in any of these projects in any way that they would like to. These are some photos of the camps around the world. The one on the far left here is from Guatemala, where land is being transformed away from slash and burn agriculture back to tropical forestry with various native and food producing trees. On the right, we have a picture of them measuring out a contour line. More pictures of various camps. The one on the left is a camp called Mainsprings in Tanzania. This one on the right is a camp in Australia where they're replanting tropical forests. Here on the left, we have a camp that's in a very highly desertified part of the world in Morocco. This is an initiative called Camp Mombasa Mangroves, which is replanting mangrove swamp. We have a pretty cool structure where we're very bottom up and we're very mycelial, so anyone can join the movement, and then once you are a part of it, we are creating a mycelial network where the camps share information with each other on an online system. So camps give each other advice, discuss tips and techniques for what's working, what's not, and we're mainly funded by hundreds of everyday people. We aim to have impact in 3 areas. First, we look at, we've used Satish Kumar's idea of soil, soul and society to kind of categorize our impact indicators. So we're looking at carbon sequestration in the soil, we're looking at biomass levels, surface temperatures. For the soul, we're looking at how people who experience a camp feel after they've been there, and how we can help tackle feelings of anxiety. And society, how a livelihood is being positively impacted. And that is the end of my time. Yeah, so please, if you want to get involved, check us out. There are many, many ways that you can join in with what we do, and everyone's welcome. So thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Ashley. And yeah, it's been such a pleasure to see that grow and develop over the last few years. It's just incredible how many camps there are all over the world now. Our next story is bringing us back into the UK. So we want to share a short video with you about a project called Cooperation Town, which is an inspiring community food resilience initiative based in Camden, all about bringing neighbours together to meet our basic needs of food. So Dan, that's over with you and the video, please.
Thank you.
I think that once you start organizing with your neighbors, you realize that you have much more in common with them than, you know, needing to eat. And finding maybe that working collectively around other issues is beneficial to everyone, and that you're stronger as a group. So for sure, when they come to, you know, demolish our estates and our nurseries and our GP practices, we may already be a bit more organized.
We started on the idea before Christmas, long before COVID, just with getting something going locally in Kentish Town in Camden. We wanted to demystify the principles behind it and show people that anyone can start a co-op.
The jobs to do in a co-op, working on the shopping list together, the collective shopping list, maybe driving to pick up the delivery, maybe waiting for the delivery, unpacking, repacking, rebagging sugar and flour and whatever it is that members decided to buy. Somebody has to collect the money, so there will be a treasurer. In my co-op, I'm a co-treasurer with a 16-year-old who is really good at maths. Somebody has to list all the members, so like a membership coordinator. So there are all these small jobs, but all in all, it should not take more than an hour a week, maybe half an hour a week amongst all the members. You're good at it.
I love cooking.
You love cooking?
Yeah.
Well, one day we could have a big meal when we are allowed again.
There's no shortage of food, but there's a massive problem of food poverty. We have to start where we're at, which is in our neighbourhoods and in our communities, to start tackling this problem of excess and redistribution.
Each household puts in between £3 to £10, it depends on what they decide in their co-op, to buy food in bulk. So it's already much cheaper than each person going to the shop. And in addition to that, they will get any of the free food that is here. So this is shared amongst everyone. So they'll get the free milk, and there's flour and potatoes and all these veg. The free food would mostly be coming from the Felix Project, which is a supermarket surplus repurposing charity, and they send us loads of food.
Sandwiches, crisps, bread. We're going to get milk, tea. You got vegetables. You got all sorts.
This week you'll be going out to one co-op of 20 households.
The orange bags are for a community of refugees and asylum seekers that are being housed temporarily because of COVID.
They're going to another group of 9 households down in Camden, and to about 50 more people all around Camden. That's about 100 households this week.
A lot of people, they want it, but they can't come all of them here. So we're trying each area to set up their own and to find a place where the food can come.
We recommend that Corporation Town Co-ops stay quite small. So we're talking about 20 households as a rule. And when they get bigger, when they get to 20 people, 20 members, and more people want to join, we just suggest that they split. 5 members who maybe live a bit further down the road or maybe on the next block can start a co-op there, and they already know how to do it. It's more democratic and it's more participatory. You can reach decisions about consent, all that kind of stuff.
We are happy to become the first Somali woman who set up a co-op, and we heard that our name is Kashata Mokofto.
Maybe in the same neighborhood we could start from one co-op and end up with 12. This is a way to build a movement.
I hope that this kind of things will bring together to the people, so we know who is sick, who is not well, so we can help.
But we did not invent the co-op model. We just tweaked it a bit to make it more accessible and easier for people to organize together. We spent the last few months developing this. It's our starter pack. We're translating it now to other languages. You can download it and you can experiment with it. You don't even need us, but if you did want to speak to us, we can join you by Zoom. We will come to your founding meeting, which is your most important meeting, when you make decisions about how to make decisions together.
There's loads of flexibility, and the point is that people come together and organise together in whatever shape or form that might be.
We are also fundraising to be able to support every new co-op with a bit of seed funding. So that can be towards your hall hire, maybe for the first time when you haven't got a space yet. It can go towards your first shop.
A lot of other people are benefiting from furlough, or they're in a situation where they've had a bit of cushioning from the government scheme, and redistributing any kind of savings that you're making as a result of not having to travel into work every day would be really, really helpful.
Those small donations would help us to unlock bigger funding. We want to be able to set up an infrastructure here that will be able to support all those new co-ops in a sustainable way.
When lockdown first happened, we did see this wellspring of mutual aid groups beginning to form in communities and getting organised.
But doing somebody's shopping is not the solution. We need to organise in food co-ops, but we also need to organise around those wages, around this terrible housing, around the lack of services. It's all connected. We had a call from Preston City Council, which is the most progressive local authority in the UK, and they asked if we could explore together a way to roll out the Corporation Town model across Preston and the neighbouring local authorities. And I think in terms of movement building, we need to think on all those levels, from the very grassroots, the 20 people on their block coming together to buy sacks of potatoes, to a citywide, and maybe beyond that. We want to see a food co-op on every street in every town.
Great. Yeah, we felt like that was a really important story to share this evening, because of this explosion of mutual aid groups that have been coming up in response to the COVID crisis, and that amazing role that co-ops and neighbours coming together can play. So next on to our next speaker. So the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement has been one of the biggest things to happen in the last year. Rooted in grief and rage, and also with a positive vision for the future, it has been a movement of both hope and resistance. While much of the focus and most of the demonstration has been on cities, there's also been fascinating and inspirational equivalent in rural areas. It's called Black Lives Matter in the Sticks, and here is Gurpreet Kaur to tell us more about that. Gurpreet, over to you.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm Gurpreet. I'm going to share my screen and show you a video.
Look at me how I am white. It's just my skin, what I was born with. I never knew it was a fearful thing. Look at me how I travel unopposed. I have never been stopped and searched for driving, for walking, for standing. It's just my skin, what I was born with. I never knew it was a passport. But look at me how my mind is made for knowing and has no excuse. And knowing is change. I am not good. I am only normal. I cannot mend everything, not by myself, but I can mend something. I am supposed to. That is a human obligation. That is the working of necessary love.
Thank you for watching that. I am Gurpreet, as I said. I live in a little town in Essex, and when the Black Lives Matter movement was reignited with the death of George
in-person
Floyd.
learning, like the essential service it is.
Hang on.
He challenged all 50.
Sorry, YouTube's just going on to the next video. Yeah, so when George Floyd was murdered, I had this sort of box in my head where I'd been storing all these racist incidents for years that just exploded. And I think that happened to a lot of people. And I just thought, I'm sick of this. I don't want to live like this anymore. And I'd made the choice to become anti-racist in that moment. I decided to post something on my local forum. And what happened was lots and lots of people started to get in touch, because I put online a letter that I'd written to my local MP, and people got in touch wanting that letter to send it on, you know, all quite small fry to begin with. And then basically this conversation started up, and people started contacting me because people were leaving slightly racist comments, covertly racist comments. And people started contacting me saying, well, we didn't, you know, I didn't know there was racism in this area. Like, how come there's racism here? You know, this is awful. What do we do about it? And I was really shocked, because I, as an Indian woman, wherever I go, I think racism exists. And what happened was I realized that there are white people living in rural areas who don't realize that racism is in their area. And for me, that was a shock. And I realized in that moment that if there are people out there who don't realize that racism is in their area, then there's something we can do about that. And so BLM in the Sticks, a national campaign to end rural racism, was born. That event was the kickoff of the campaign. We put that out online, and we had over 90 different organizations from around the country contact us wanting to do anti-racism work, some of them sparked off by BLM movements. We've been in the press, we've been on the radio, I've done various podcasts. We've developed an expert panel of anti-racist practitioners, trainers, academics, artists, and we've been putting together a plan to try and end rural racism. So our two key goals, one is to try and get everybody who's not racist to become anti-racist. There are plenty of people who are kind-hearted, don't think badly of anyone, don't do anything racist overtly, but actually by not speaking up against racism or allowing it to prevail. In rural areas, racism is usually downplayed, denied, and dismissed. You know, if there is a racist incident, people say, oh, well, you know, it must have been a one-off, or they say, oh, they can't have meant that, you know. So just by being anti-racist, you can end this kind of this oppression that makes it difficult for people of colour to be recognised as suffering in their area. And when racism goes on in rural areas, it causes people of colour to withdraw from the community. And that's really sad in a rural area because they don't have another community to fall back on. And one of the beautiful things about rural areas is the community spirit. So that's one thing we want to do. It's probably going to be a media campaign. We're kind of coming up with the ideas for that. And the last thing we want to do is set up a network to support anti-racist activists around the country. My time's up.
Preet, thank you so much. Thank you for your activism and your punctuality, both wonderful. Thank you so much. One of the things that Transition Bounce Forward did before this summit was to distribute over £140,000 to transition groups in England and Wales as part of our National Lottery funded seed funding. And one of the recipients of that was Portland for the Planet, for their work co-creating several community allotments, orchards, wildflower beds, wildlife corridors, spaces for reflection, sharing, creative thinking, people's assemblies, and more besides. So I'm going to hand over to Laura Baldwin from Portland for the Planet to tell us more. Laura.
Thank you very much, Rob. Just get this started. There we go. My name is Laura Baldwin. I am an Olympic sailor and coach, and I've lived my life by the motto that if you can believe it, you can achieve it. And there's never been a more important time in history to believe that change is possible. I was inspired by reading Rob's books, From What Is to What If, and the power of just doing stuff. You know, it made me think of all the different things that I could do to help my community, to change the deprived and disconnected to a thriving community. And my response to learning about the troubles we're in, and after connecting with all the existing local groups, was to set up Portland for the Planet and engage the community in visioning the positive changes we want and need, initially through weekly cafe drop-in sessions, and then by hosting people's assemblies that all residents were invited to. There's so much needing to change. And, you know, in order to engage people in these changes, engage them into the discussions and the decision-making process, it can be really powerful to lessen the resistance and to increase consent. So we did a tour of our local towns and we asked two questions. And the first was, what should our county council do to tackle the climate and ecological emergency? And the outcomes were fed back to the council. And the second question was, what can we do as a community? And this question really increased the energy and the enthusiasm in the room tenfold. You know, people were really excited by the ideas being shared and were really keen to get involved. And the outcomes became Portland for the Planet's action list. I went into schools and delivered a talk entitled From Anxiety to Empowerment in the Face of the Climate Crisis, that sparked great excitement and enthusiasm amongst the students and staff to get involved in the local projects, to boost nature and to decarbonise. And I organised an eco fair to educate my community about the problems we face and also the solutions we could embrace. And so we set to it, and it was loads of fun. And we planted 800 trees over a couple of sessions with around 40 volunteers, and then collected fallen nuts and seeds that we planted in what has now become our tree nursery. We held a successful clothes swap where, incredibly, everyone walked away with absolutely thrilled with the new items that they got. The council gave Portland for the Planet an allotment space to use as a community plot. It needed a lot of work to prepare it to get ready to plant. But my son and I actually successfully grew some food, total beginner. And the joy that he expressed when we returned to find the seeds we'd planted had borne fruits that we could eat was truly wonderful, and it's something that every child should get to experience. This winter, we planted 1,500 tree saplings in 3 council-held sports fields, creating diverse wildlife hedges. And we've started what will become a small woodland and planted 4 pocket orchards so far. And due to the COVID restrictions limiting volunteer numbers, what took 2 sessions last winter took 2 months this year. Having personally experienced the mental and physical benefits of tree planting, from connecting to the soil and giving life a chance, I'm passionate about providing more people with this opportunity. And those that have helped have expressed that the experience has provided them with immense positive effects. Amazing initiatives are popping up across the island, including a seed library and a red phone booth. We've painted signs ready to display on the verges to explain why they're growing wild, and some sections will be planted up with beautiful wildflowers. We've built 5 plant tubs from pallets and plan to build a lot more to create a wheelchair-friendly, accessible growing space. And we plan to engage the schools in growing trees from seeds. And with the money very gratefully received from the Transition Bounce Forward seed funding, I plan to create 2 further community allotments to connect neighbours and provide a solution to the current food crisis. We'll teach them self-organising skills, active listening and conflict resolution skills. We'll include attractive spaces for socialising, ideas generating, and play areas for the kids with mud kitchens and sand pits. We'll incorporate a community shelf for giving what you can and taking what you need, and a share shed of useful things that we don't all need to own. The main shed will double as a refreshment counter, and we'll build a pizza oven to encourage people to select their toppings from the garden, prep and eat together as a community, whilst dreaming up our next big idea to transition Portland. It's time to dream, believe and achieve. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. Wonderful stuff. And there are many other stories of what groups have done who were funded through the seed funding, which you can find in on the Transition Bounce Forward website. So one of my own favorite examples of new economy approaches of really fresh thinking, rooted in a community bringing new and really pioneering ideas, takes us to Somerset in the southwest of England. And so I'm going to ask Sally Lowndes of the Onion Collective to tell us more about what the Onion Collective are up to. Sally, over to you.
Hi there, thank you. Gosh, following so many amazing stories. Yes, so hold on, just get this up properly. Come on. Yes, so I'm Sally Lowndes from the Onion Collective. Thank you so much for having me. Turn on my timer. So Onion Collective is a community business in Watchet in West Somerset. And we're interested in issues around place and attachment and demonstrating a new version of economics in which people and planet matter and imagination is central. So we've spent the last 7 years developing a portfolio. Why is this not clicking? Oh, there we are. Developing a portfolio of projects with and for our local community to create jobs and opportunities, boost the economy and nurture agency and belonging. And to underpin this work, we've also sought to better understand our social fabric and the relationships that exist here. Oh, my presentation's getting a bit odd, sorry. And how our connectedness creates a kind of invisible scaffolding that holds our town together. So this work really began 10 years ago when 2 of our directors set up Minehead Eye, which is a £3 million indoor skate park, from which they now deliver all of the youth services for West Somerset. It was built with conviction and tenacity around the need to provide better opportunities for our young people here, and a firm and contagious belief that if you put your mind to it, anything is possible. So from here, Onion was formed with an intent to work collaboratively with our community to develop a stronger and more just economic future here in our beautiful coastal hometown, and to reimagine what is possible in a place. So Watchet is an incredible town to be a part of, brimming with community energy and joy and connection. But it's also a place on the edge, on the periphery. We're coastal, rural, and over an hour from any centres of commerce. So the market economy has never really worked here. So what we have in social connection, we lack in jobs and opportunities, though we do have an extraordinary industrial history. But in a narrative that's common to coastal communities in this country, throughout the latter part of the 20th century, as the market-based economy took hold, we slowly lost our industries, with the final piece of the puzzle being a paper mill that closed here in 2015 with the loss of 175 jobs. Consequently, we now officially have the lowest social mobility in the whole of the country. So that means if you're born poor here, you have less chance of changing your fortunes than you would in any other place in the country. So it's in this context that we're seeking to redefine what's possible as well as what matters. So we're working with as many different people as we can from our town to deliver ambitious projects ranging from a visitor centre to a large socially engaged cultural complex on our quayside. So East Quay, this is East Quay, has been designed with endless rounds of community feed-in over 7 years. It includes a gallery, a print studio, handmade paper mill, accommodation pods, workshops, geology lab, cafe and education space that was designed in collaboration with local teenagers. The building, which is due for completion this summer, will provide this physical space in which local people can come together to creatively question the future they want to be part of in the face of the kind of rapidly changing and uncertain context that we live in. So our work also includes Biomill Watch It, where we have partnered with nature-led biomanufacturing company Biome to deliver a new socially and environmentally regenerative industry. Here, we will bring Biome's products to market, feeding local waste streams to fungus, and in the process, growing insulation panels for buildings. So once we begin to generate a profit, we'll use this money to invest in our town, so providing a mechanism for community-led and funded renewal. And we're working with an amazing community panel, as well as carrying out regular whole town community workshops to inform and deliver this work, reconnecting the economics of our place with the community and showing that a different way is possible. So this industry is currently in its trial phase. So these projects are big and exciting and have the potential to create real social change, fundamentally because they challenge the idea of profit extraction. Instead, our business model is based on inclusivity, fairness, compassion, attachment, and social and cultural justice. So it's about both physical and social infrastructure and how they interplay. So with this in mind, we're working with a gaming company called Free Ice Cream to map and interrogate our community relationships, exploring the flows of energy and ways we work together to achieve our goals. Together, we're developing a really exciting new platform called Understory, and it's just showing on my screen right now, a screenshot from it, that will help communities to better understand and strengthen their social fabric. And so our work has shifted from being a series of local initiatives and place-based approaches to being about systems change, because we believe that community could be the very foundation of a new way of enacting economics and an antidote to the kind of nationalistic, divisive, intolerant narrative that's taken hold in recent years. Just final close. So our vision is, we call it attachment economics. It's about reattaching concern for others to the way we run our economy and how through this we can overcome many of the social and environmental externalities that are so damaging within the current economic system. Because community is the personal and the visceral, the level we can reach out and touch, it encompasses fierce love, compassion, concern, and it stops us from wanting to be extractive and instead asks us what we can contribute. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Sally. That's such an inspiring project and it's given me lots of food for thought there. Thank you. So our next story takes us to the US. When we put a call out to transition hubs around the world, we got many suggestions of stories from different groups across the US, and we were especially thrilled by this one. So we're very happy that Tobin McKee is here to tell us about their work building a solidarity economy over there. Tobin, it's over to you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I am a program administrator at Cooperation Humboldt in Humboldt County, Northern California. And we are a transition initiative in association with Transition US. Cooperation Humboldt started in 2018 and really started to move forward quickly as a leader in the development of solidarity economics on the North Coast. And what we're really aiming to do is to empower people to meet their collective needs in harmony with nature, without exploiting anyone. And since the theme of tonight's event is Blizzard of Stories, I'm going to tell you about how we started a snowball of collaboration. And I think the best way to frame this is to say that we really don't think of ourselves as a nonprofit organization. We think of ourselves as part of a peaceful regenerative revolution. And so when we're building new relationships, we start by describing what we believe. And it's kind of intense and it has an incredible effect. We believe that our current institutions are fundamentally racist and sexist and class oppressive. This is a current reality, and it's the result of social, political, and economic systems that incentivize domination and the exploitation of women, people of color, and poor, unsheltered, disabled, queer, undocumented, and indigenous people. This is the way that our world is right now. And we believe that capitalism is an economic system based on that exploitation and oppression, and that it will destroy the planet if we don't shift to a cooperative and sustainable economic system. And with that urgency in mind, we believe that it's possible to create new institutions that incentivize all the things that people have been talking about here today so beautifully: love, compassion, kindness. And this new system will be capable of supporting every person with a good quality of life. So we lift up and support all groups that are doing grassroots organizing and working with working class people and people of color, people who are training organizers to build long-term strategies to resist fascism and create new models for a collaborative future reality. And in working toward that new reality, we started a tumbling, a revolution of a snowball of collaboration. It's really pulled forward by the gravity of our shared experiences of economic exploitation and oppression, and growing turn by turn as we gather the collective mass and energy that's inevitable when there are so many capable people, each aware of our individual and collective needs. And I think we have at this point a deep felt sense of what's necessary. And with our work grounded in the principles of solidarity economics, which are cooperation, mutualism, sharing, reciprocity, altruism, love, caring, and gifting, this is what a snowball looks like when it takes shape. It looks like a group of formerly incarcerated Yurok women coming together to support each other in a GED study group. It looks like little free pantries and public fruit trees spread everywhere, sharing food with everyone who passes by. Or more than 500 people coming together just last week for our 4th annual Artists Dismantling Capitalism conference. It looks like eco-villages forming in collaboration between impact investors and Wiyot tribal members on tribally managed land trusts. Or the New Rising Hmong Association, a group of 5 Hmong women working together with a mentorship of Native American pathways as a worker self-directed nonprofit advancing health and wellness for the Hmong community. We're building a community food guide that actively promotes access, equity, education, and empowerment in relation to our local food system, planting hundreds of mini gardens and distributing them to low-income community members, and building a downtown community garden that's a designated sanctuary space. On the bigger picture, we work toward the advancement of public banking in California and Humboldt County. And our worker cooperative incubator is funded by federal money through the North Coast Small Business Development Center, an unlikely and wonderful collaboration between a local nonprofit and a federal agency. And we're also putting together a multi-agency disaster response and resilience program, building community power through disaster relief and creating long-term resilience, and a street outreach program that provides winter weather gear for unsheltered people and employs project participants as community health workers. We're often asked, why is this working so well and so quickly? And our answer is that it's really that the core of this revolution is a community of, right now, more than 70 core team members and growing, that works in a distributed leadership that completely decentralizes power. So our distributed leadership structure means that an individual like myself showing up here today is not part of a hierarchical leadership structure, but a completely decentralized power structure in the organization. That's built on a training program that puts through hundreds of people each year in the principles of solidarity economics. And so that's Cooperation Humboldt, and we really feel like, despite all of what I just shared, that's just the beginning. We're thinking of this as a revolution. Thanks, y'all.
Wow, thank you, Tobin. Thank you so much. And I don't know about anybody else, but my head is starting to reel at this stage. Dismantling capitalism conferences and the idea that we might very soon be able to insulate our homes with insulating panels made out of waste eaten by mushrooms. We can already, there's a future here that feels an awful lot more tangible and real than it did recently. And in my role with Transition Network, I traveled a lot before COVID to meet people doing great projects and doing transition in different places. And one of my favorites, which I talk about regularly in presentations, was in a town in France about half an hour inland from Nice called Montsartou. And I'm told by many French friends that I don't pronounce it properly, largely because saying it correctly involves, I think, making your mouth into a shape that mine generally doesn't enjoy making. But anyway, I visited there and saw an amazing project led by the town's municipality to create a new food system to feed the town's schools. And the behavior change that the project led to was really quite something. So it's an honor that we're joined all the way from Montsartou, which I'm sure will now be pronounced correctly, by Gilles Perrol, who is the deputy mayor for the town, to tell us more. Gilles, thank you so much for joining us, and over to you. Thank you.
Gilles, you might need to unmute your mic.
Okay, oh, sorry, I didn't see. Okay, I'm going to be ready. So thanks for your words, Rob. And first I want to present my apology for my bad English, but I try to speak in English for you this evening. So Montsartou is a little city of 10,000 inhabitants on the French Riviera, in a highly urbanized area where strong land speculation has negatively impacted the environment. For 40 years, we have resisted this speculation to protect natural and agricultural space. So in 28, Montsartou decided to offer children a 100% organic canteen to respect their health and the environment. We reached its objective in 2012. Every day, the city serves 1,300 organic meals to children in nursery and school and to the municipal staff. In 2019, students of the middle school also demanded organic food from the administration, which does not depend on the city. They have won. So Montsartou has become the only town in France to serve 100% organic meals from 0 to 15 years younger. In France, many elected officials say that they can't increase organic because it's too expensive. This project of 100 organic canteen was set up at not extra cost, thanks to an 80% reduction in food waste and 2 vegetarian meals per week. In order to be able to supply our canteen with the organic and local vegetables, in 28, we looked for farmers, local farmers. Too few in the region, none answered our tender. So, starting from a joke, we decided to produce them ourselves. 10 years ago, it was just the birthday of the 10 birthdays of the municipal farm, the 1st of March. So 10 years ago, the first municipal farm in France was born that produced vegetables for the children's canteen. 3 farmers employed by the municipality grow vegetables from seed to plate on a 6-hectare estate. 25 tons of vegetables are cultivated each year. There are more than 30 species of vegetables, which are real biodiversity of the plants. With this production, we are autonomous for 96% our needs. So, okay, sorry. This estate is certified organic farming. On the 6 hectares, many trees, hedge, and wheat grasses have been left to serve as refuge and to create an ecosystem. Every day, fresh vegetables reach 3 kitchens of the city. The farthest is only 3.5 kilometers away. The vegetables are picked when ripe, loaded with vitamins and full of taste. So we are sure to always have seasonal vegetables for the children. In the 3 kitchens, 22 people prepare organic meals every morning from raw and local products for balanced and tasty meals. In the summer, the cooks also freeze vegetables to make reserves for the end of winter when there is less production. Can change. In 2016, in the middle of the municipal farm, we created the Center for Sustainable Food Education, which drives the city's sustainable food project. Many actions towards inhabitants and business are carried out to develop sustainable food and build our food sovereignty. Children come to the municipal farm during school time to observe, plant, and harvest the vegetable they eat every day. So they know them and they eat them with pleasure after. We share our experience with many French and European cities, so around 20 municipal farms have already been born inspired by that of Monsanto. You can find them in France, Belgium, Romania, Portugal. After sharing our project for 2 years with 6 European cities within the European Urban Biocontis project, we will organize an event on March 23 to support the movement of European cities engaged from democracy and food sovereignty. So you can invite your elected representative to participate this meeting. Thank you. And now we are going to à table et bon appétit. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Giles. What an inspiring project. And as someone said in the chat there, sometimes the solutions we need are the simplest and they're all there ready waiting for us. So thank you for sharing and thank you for your English. It is much better than my French, that's for sure. So many of the ideas we've talked about so far this evening, and indeed many of the ideas and approaches we'll be covering during the summit, can scale up and could be used as founding principles for entire nations. One of the most inspiring examples of this that's happening right now is happening in Rojava, which is in a region in northern Syria and southeastern Turkey. People in Rojava are collectively building a society based on principles of direct democracy, ecology, and women's liberation. They also have cooperatives playing a crucial role in building their economy. And they're doing this despite military repression from the state of Turkey and other actors. It's a really inspiring project, and this evening we're delighted to welcome Jo Taylor to tell us more. Jo, over to you.
Hi, thank you. Okay, so it's not my time. So in 2016, I was invited to join a women's delegation to Syria. So this is the north of Syria. There's a large Kurdish population. There's been a revolution in process there since 2012 in the midst of the broader conflict in Syria. So I knew a little bit about Kurdistan and the Kurdish freedom movement before I went there. I knew that Kurdistan is divided by the borders of 4 nation states. and that Kurds are an oppressed minority in all 4 of them. That the Kurdish freedom movement, which began in Turkey, is also active in Syria and has begun a revolution there. And I knew that the word Rojava is Kurdish for West, because it's the western part of Kurdistan, a nation without a state. So it's the purple part there. But this is the north of Syria. So north of Syria is West Kurdistan. And that there's a strong women's liberation aspect to the revolution, but I didn't know how much. So I arrived on International Women's Day. There was a huge demonstration. This is the most awesome demonstration I've ever been to in my life. There were thousands and thousands and thousands of women, really brightly colorful, really warm, a lot of love in the air, a lot of power in the air. This is when I first started to feel the strength and the awesome power of the women's movement. This was followed by a 2 to 3 week tour of the women's movement organizational structures. So I saw women's defense structures, the women's houses where they're doing like community mediation, healthcare centers, schools, academies, cooperatives. And it really changed my life because it showed me that something was possible that I'd never had the courage to believe before. So a little bit of history. 2012, the revolution was first declared in the city of Kobani. So you might recognize Kobani from this really famous photo. These are just a couple of photos I got off the internet. These are not ones that I took, but I think that they both illustrate the kind of different sides of the history of Kobani and actually the wider region over the last few years. But the revolution has much deeper roots. So the Kurdish freedom movement, which began it, has been organizing for over 40 years. So it's in its 5th decade now. And it is arguably one of the strongest movements in history. It's had perhaps the strongest municipalist movement in the world in Bakur, the Kurdish region of Turkey, which is unfortunately now brutally suppressed with most elected representatives behind bars. And it gave birth to this Rojava revolution. And this region now, the official title is the Autonomous Administrations of North and East Syria. So here's a couple of different schematic maps on how society is being organized. It's about 4 to 5 million people in this region of North and East Syria. It's a very internationalist movement though. So we're talking about this region, but we're also talking about this huge movement that's organized actually in all 4 parts of Kurdistan and the Kurdish diaspora all over the world. So I have to describe this in 5 minutes. Okay, we continue. So this movement transitioned from a kind of classical national liberation movement when it started to, especially in the 2000s, early 2000s, like a vast tapestry of civil society organizations, communes, councils, committees, parties, unions, women's houses, cooperatives, and more. And there's also autonomous women's structures in all of these, which actually have the power to veto, and there's like a co-chair system and all these other things. And cooperatives are a part of this as well. So I came home, I began working with what is now the Solidarity Economy Association, and we've got a project called Cooperation in Mesopotamia, which aims to raise awareness about the Rojava Revolution, particularly the co-ops, and to build solidarity and relationships between co-ops here and in Europe and co-ops in this region. And last year we initiated the Water for Rojava project. The Turkish state in particular continues to detain water flow into the region. There's a massive water crisis. We're working in particular with the women's economy structures in the region. And we've so far raised over £110,000. You can still donate, please donate, for water related projects and women's co-ops. So since I came home, I'm just going to show you some pictures of co-ops while I'm talking. I've been in a process of kind of learning and unlearning. So I've been learning that we need to understand our history and the system that we're living in order to change it. And this is not just the last 500 years, but this movement understands the root of this as a 5,000-year-old system that is built on the nation state, not the nation state, but the state model itself. Before the nation state, there was different kinds of states, and patriarchy as part of that. And unlearning the system that we've been conditioned into. So there's a need for like really radical understanding of this system, and this is what this project is kind of built on. Co-ops in Rojava, they're connected to the communes at the base of society. They're set up to meet the needs of society, the needs of the communities. They're part of a broader strategy for liberation rather than kind of an end in themselves. And we want to work with co-ops here to kind of understand some of these ideas. So we want you to get in touch with us and please donate to the water project. And that is it. Yeah, this is Syria today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joe, for that. Fantastic. So 2021, in a 2021 of pandemics and austerity and budgets cut to the bone, how might councils bring fresh, imaginative thinking to the problems they face? A few months ago, Barrow Borough Council were part of an amazing community imagination exercise called the New Constellation. Next week, next Tuesday evening, we'll be hosting a whole session on this, so you can hear more in detail about the process and how it worked. But we're honoured to be joined by Sam Plum, the Council's Chief Executive, to tell us more about the New Constellation and about how it's informing thinking moving forward. Sam.
Thanks, Rob. Hi, everybody. How are we all doing? It's been amazing so far. My imposter syndrome is about this big at the moment. But yeah, anyway, so Barrow, for those that don't know it, is on the southwest corner of Cumbria at the north of Morecambe Bay. And as a council, one of the things we've been trying to do since I became chief exec a couple of years ago is really put our residents at the heart of everything that we do. And our ethos is around compassion, love and kindness. And I think just picking up on Fedzilla's poem at the start of this, which was incredible, one of the things that coronavirus has really shown us in our place is that we really can't go back to normal, because normal didn't work for so many of our residents. And we really need to start to think about the journey that we need to go on what kind of future we want for our place and our people. So what if we could chart a new course for our people and our place? What would it look like and how would we get there? And that really is the starting point for Barrow's New Constellation. As Rob said, there is a session on this next week, and I don't want to give away too many spoilers. But a constellation is a point of orientation, something to head towards once you've left the shore, but don't quite know where you're going to land. So we worked with Hilary Cottam, an incredible social entrepreneur, and managed to secure some funding from the lottery called Emerging Futures. And through that, we recruited 15 local people from Barrow, from all walks of life. So that included a tyre fitter, a GP who was incredibly busy and had just started rolling out vaccines and doing an amazing job, a hairdresser, a few shipyard workers, a police officer, a counsellor, and me. And we spent a week last December setting sail on an immersive journey to start to chart that new course for our borough. The journey helped us think about the next chapter in Barrow's story and what we'd need to do to help us get there. Rob and Hilary joined us on that journey and shared tales from far off lands, many of which I've reheard tonight, and it's been fantastic. And they helped to inspire us and think about what we could really do in our town and our borough. Through that week, we generated 10 hours of audio, and we've distilled that into a 16-minute audio clip, which we will play in full next week. And we also created 12 beautiful shining stars, which will act as our guideposts to that brighter future, which we've imagined together for our place. The constellation was an incredibly powerful experience, and all the crew members that took part in that week got so much out of it, but it really is just the start of the journey. And my pledge as chief exec of our borough at the end of that week was to hold that constellation on behalf of our crew and to make sure that it acts as a framework for the decision making for our council and for our partners. And we're well on the way on the journey now to make that a reality. So everything we need to do as a council should be moving us in that direction to that brighter future that we've created and imagined together. The crew members themselves were incredible, and they came together through that week and were absolutely bursting with ideas and projects and things that they wanted to do to improve their town and make it a place where their children would want to settle and not leave for the bright lights of the city. And we're working with the crew members now to see how we can help them to create the projects that they imagined and bring them to life. And some of the things that we're already working on together is more spaces for community growing, for gardens, for playing, connecting our young people to some of our beautiful places to build pride and belonging, and sustainable tourism ideas where local people act as guides to celebrate our hidden gems and show them off to visitors. We've also been lucky enough to secure some significant external funding over the last 12 months, which is creating opportunities for our borough. So we've secured over £30 million of government funding and other external funding just in the last 12 months. And that's going to create many, many more opportunities to really instill our constellation and our vision and our future into those projects to make them what our borough needs to be. And just two of those examples, which I'll leave you with tonight, are an outdoor centre by the sea on Walney Island, which we're working with Eden Project North to create as a place where people can come and reconnect to nature and just be. And in the town centre, we're starting to work on a new project to develop an Imaginarium where local people can come together as Barrovians, and it's a place to create, to come together, to imagine, to grow and to just be. Thank you.
Rob, I think we're handing on to you to tell the last story.
Okay, so and so to our very final story. Sam, thank you so much. And yeah, really do come to the session about that next Tuesday. It's an extraordinary process. So to our final story. So Karma is an ambitious transition project that grew out of a campaign to save prime farmland north of Paris from being obliterated by a massive, utterly insane, as you're about to hear, construction scheme. So here is Sylvie Deco to tell us more. Sylvie?
Thank you. So here we are, sharing the screen. And putting on the timer. So here we are. This is north of Paris. So you see we're 15 kilometers from Notre Dame. We are right by the Charles de Gaulle's airport and by Le Bourget, where the Paris Climate Agreement was signed in 2015. Because it's so near Paris, that triangle has been under threat of urbanization forever, for a very long time. This was the latest avatar. It was called Europa City. It was a super mega mall. And we fought for 9 years, and eventually President Macron said it was outdated and dropped it. And this was the land that we wanted to save. This is what it looked like. So our fight took the usual demonstration, marches, court case, and events. But we found what was most efficient was bringing people to the land. So we started a garden, harvesting, creating events, picnics, etc. Artists came, musicians. This is a baker because the bread of goodness was extremely well known back in the 17th century. The land is absolutely rich. But we found that fighting against was really not enough, but it was much more interesting to bring an alternative project. What did we want on that land? And so the Karma project was created, and it's both a think tank, but it's also operational. It started with a dream. The dream was bringing back a food belt around Paris that would feed the local inhabitants, and the food wouldn't be just transported elsewhere, for schools, hospitals, care homes, and would also create economic activity in the neighboring towns of recycling, eco-construction, eco-mobility, etc. But what made it absolutely fantastic was also finding people with who to make it happen. So Karma is a very committed team. We have experts like agronomers, economists, urban planners, but also local entrepreneurs and stakeholders, communicators. So today we have 4 projects which are ready to start immediately on the triangle, which could start. So the land belongs to the state through the regional land agency because it had bought the land to build Europe a city. It was set aside. So these are the projects which could start with people to start them. First of all, an experimental farm using agroforestry and permaculture. We know that 45% of farmers will be retiring in the next 10 years. So a new generation would be ready to take over, and these would be in network with existing experimental farms in the area. Another project is flowers. There are people growing, a company growing flowers not very far away, and they'd be very happy to expand. Part of the triangle is polluted and not fit for fruit production, but it would be perfect for flowers. And historically, what's very interesting is that only 40 years ago, tulips were grown on that land, not only wheat. We also have a project with medicinal plants and an innovative composting plant. We see these as kickstarters for a more ambitious regional plan, because as the Karma project is getting well known, more and more institutions and micro businesses in the area are approaching us to be part of it. Politically, the dossier is on the desk of the government and of the regional council. The local mayor, unfortunately, is against. He's not very much in favor of this. But for them, everything is on hold. We're waiting to hear, because the government still wants to build a station. This was a station that was planned for Europe a city, but Europe City is cancelled, but they still want to build the station for urbanization. So we have 2 stories, 2 imaginations in front of us: a station for urbanization or a fertile landscape for feeding the local population. When we heard it, we organized an event where there was an oath that was signed. People declared themselves co-owners. Then there was an Occupy movement, which held for 2 weeks in sub-zero temperatures. The police evicted them just last week, and now we're still waiting to hear what next.
Thank you. So thank you, Sylvie, so much. So yes, you must keep us posted. We will, as soon as you hear some news, you must tell us and we will share it through all of our channels. Wow. So thank you so much to all of our guests for making our blizzard of stories so extraordinary. That was such a powerful immersion in so much possibility.
Okay, Rob, did you want to introduce Fanny?
I could, yeah. So welcome back. Whilst you've been chatting, our visual note taker, Fanny, has been doing some beautiful drawings of this session. So I'm going to hand over to Fanny now to share her screen.
Thank you, Rob. Well, thank you so much to all the speakers and everyone who is here today. So I will share with you the live drawing I've been doing during the session. Let's see if I can put the evolution of the drawing so you can see a bit how it goes. Yeah, it has been mind-blowing, heart-blowing, as I heard tonight, and yeah, it gives a lot of energy to just go out and hug your neighbor, and I don't know, create a garden with your neighbors and share stories, share a meal, invite to have a walk. So it was really needed tonight. So thank you so much to Rhiannon also and Rob and all the team.
Brilliant.
So yeah, here you can see a bit of all the topics and all the different initiatives and projects that have been presented. Here in black with in white is the name of the project, and we will be sharing the visuals afterwards on social media. So feel free to share and have a look to grab some ideas and keep getting inspired by each other. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Fanny, for sharing, and so beautiful to have that visual representation of all that's been going on this evening. Looks really great. We will be putting that and all the links that have been shared this evening on the Losing Control platform. That's the platform that you all signed up through. And on there, you will see that there is a group for every different session that is happening during the summit. So if you go to the Blizzard of Stories group, you will see all the links that in the library, you will see all the links that the speakers have shared about their different projects, and we'll be uploading the solo performed and also this beautiful image from Fanny. And those will also be going out on social media as well, the poem and the image.